Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today for our webinar. And today we'll be going over business on the cloud and diving into whether AWS or Azure for cloud and hybrid environments is a better solution for your business. And before we get started, we'd like to take a quick minute just to introduce ourselves. My name is Daniel King. I am a systems engineer from Los Angeles, and I'm joined today by my colleague Slayton Meyer, who is also a systems engineer from Houston. And we do have a special guest, Atsunori Hattori, who is the information security, also known as cybersecurity, and cloud architect for Cinter Technology. And at Cinter Technology, we've been bringing IT solutions to businesses both large and small since 2013. And you can see just some of the areas in the IT field and specializations that we can assist your company with. And we have offices all over the United States and provide services nationwide, as well as in some select international markets as well. And now, going over the summary of the content that we'll go over, we'll be exploring really the key differences as well as some of the factors that will help maybe make your decision-making process on which platform to use, whether it's AWS or Azure. And we'll be going into some of the numbers associated with it, as well as the functionality and what industries typically go with one or the other. And really, it's just to give you a better understanding at the long-term function and cost and performance for your business. And really understanding some of the basics of that we think will help make the decision of which platform might be better for you. And so going along with that, really the thing to keep in the back of your mind when going through all these details is you really have to understand and identify your business needs. What are your goals currently, as well as for the short-term future and the long-term future? So where are you now technologically? What are your goals? Do you have, a full-fledged IT force with software engineers, software architects, cloud architects, systems engineers and all that? Or is it more on the lean side where you have just, a few in-house IT specialists who will help with the company's growth? All these things will, be part of the consideration of which platform would be better for you, as well as what are your growth plans for your business, both in the technology sense as well as just the business sense. Are you planning on completing a round of investments and you'll be exponentially growing your team? Those are things to be considered as well as far as what your future will look like. And of course, the finances, right? Any business, that's really one of the key elements. What are the finances for your businesses? Where do you want to be? Where are you now? And that obviously will play a key role in which platform might be better suited for you and your business. So again, just some goals to keep in the back of your mind for your business, and that'll really help establish kind of a baseline for which platform might be better for you. So without much further ado, to jump into the details, I will hand it over to my colleague, Slayton Meyer.
All right, thanks, Daniel. So like you said, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. So we're going to start with AWS here, AWS being the older brother of the two services that we have. It came out around 2006, so it has a little bit of a leg up on the competition, but that's not to say there's not plenty of options available for both that could be great for your business. I'm going to kind of go through a little bit and explain why one may be a little bit more beneficial than the other. So we'll kind of just work around that. So right here, you see a lot of logos that you probably notice. A lot of these companies are using AWS and fully supported because they do have those full-fledged teams of IT staff behind them, which is usually what we recommend when going with AWS. It is doable. If you don't have the knowledge, if you don't have the skills, you can definitely do this. There's plenty of open source forums, FAQ sections. You can learn all of this stuff as you go. But generally, when we talk to businesses, we usually suggest that they have an IT team or at least a bit of experience with cloud networking, cloud services, and cloud providers before they really take on a task like this. Again, you can do it, but it's just our suggestion in most cases. But the reason that we suggest that is because there's a lot more that you can do with AWS as far as customization and tailoring to your specific needs. It allows for a lot more client-controlled customization, and the systems are usually not dependent on a Microsoft environment. With this in mind, usually we will suggest if you're using maybe a Linux server or you're more familiar with a Mac environment or something like that, we may also suggest AWS in those instances. A lot of the companies that we refer to go to AWS are going to be like videographers, anyone that does any kind of editing, photos, things like that. It's usually going to be someone that we will push to AWS because it has less to do with Windows and it's a little bit more familiar in that regard. And it can also be less expensive because you are doing a little bit more of the work on the front end and also on the back end with AWS. Usually you'll make up that cost with the team that you'll hire. But if you are willing to jump in and try and learn as you go and things like that, AWS can be much less costly. And we'll show you that here in just a bit. But the key takeaways for AWS, you don't really have setups and you don't have to worry about going through and figuring out exactly what to do as long as you have that team behind you. And if you do choose to do this and not have a team behind you, there's, like I said, plenty of forums to use, plenty of places to learn. So it's not a very difficult task, but it is time consuming and it can really get in the way if you aren't sure what you're doing. The detail monitoring and the auto scaling groups. So with this, it makes it easy to scale up and down depending on what you need because it is so highly customizable. So if you're experiencing a down month or a down quarter, you can scale back a bit to try and recoup some of those profits that you may have missed out on when you're paying towards this provider service. And then we'll go on to Azure here. So this one is more something that we suggest for companies that are either just starting up, so they don't have a whole lot of IT experience behind them. So Azure is very good about providing support teams for you. So if you come into this, you need a cloud service, you're trying to experiment and figure out what your business can use and needs from a cloud provider, Azure is going to be a great place to start because they have full support teams available 24/7. So if you run into an issue, you're not really sure what to do, you're stuck, maybe there's network problems, you can always call them and figure it out over the phone, over chat boxes. They can take control of your screen and kind of help you out. And because you're under the contract and stuff, you don't have to worry about security or privacy. This is one of the great offerings that Azure has. And although it is a little bit less mature than AWS, of course, being around 4 years older than AWS, it doesn't have the time in that AWS does, but they've got the budget of Microsoft and dozens upon dozens of other sponsors and clients that they can use to do R&D and kind of stick with it. So, really there is a lot to say with Azure because you can come in pre-packaged offerings. So let's say you have a lot of experience with Excel products, your SQL servers, you use Active Directory a lot. This would be something that we also recommend Azure in a situation like this because the transition is so much easier. If you're already familiar with Microsoft products, it only makes sense to go with a Microsoft product when you upgrade. And in some cases that is true. Again, it's not. AWS may be better for your budget or your needs, but a lot of times the transition is just so much easier and the user interface is really easy to deal with. So whatever kind of cost difference you may run into could be made up by the fact you have a support team on hand without actually having to put them on your payroll, your taxes, which is a big thing that people don't think about when assessing these costs. So just something to keep in mind. So this next part here, I kind of want to get into a real world situation. So this real world situation, I'm just going to show you an AWS server and an Azure cloud server here. So this environment, you're setting it up. This is kind of just showing your very beginning setup. So as you look on the top, AWS is going to look a lot more difficult, and not necessarily that it is more difficult, but you definitely need to have a little more knowledge of your network, how to set up a virtual private cloud, how to make sure your security settings are all checked and okay. And you have to have a little bit more know-how behind this just to start. And as you see, the top here is in AWS Tech is setting this server instance up. And he's a little bit more frantic, kind of doing a lot more stuff, typing away, loading things. And at the bottom, we have Azure. Really, you just need to make sure that you pay for the package, you figure out what you want. Now you're just inputting your time zone, your user and password, and then some of the little things that you set up before starting a server instance. I'm not going to waste a ton of time here, but in the next few seconds, you'll see still clicking away on AWS, and Azure is kind of done. You're just putting in your user and password here. So we'll go forward just a bit, and once this is actually set up, you'll see that they're pretty much the same. AWS is still kind of working away, just making sure everything's correct. But if we go here, I think around here, you'll see that they're logging in. And once you've logged in, these are going to go to very similar instances. You're not really going to notice a difference here as far as the backgrounds, obviously, aside from the software you install. But it really is very simple to log into both of them. It's just a little bit of a setup difference. Your time may be allocated a little bit differently, and the people doing it. If you don't have that dedicated staff, you may need a little more time to set up AWS, whereas Azure, you may be on the phone or in a chat box trying to figure it out, but they're very helpful. It's very simple. And then once you're done, this is what you see. So just wanted to give you something tangible to look at and realize that this is going to be something that's doable no matter what your case. So your map for the future, again, Daniel was kind of mentioning you need to understand what your goals are. Obviously, we all want to make money, make sure our business thrives and prospers. But with that, we need to have those goals set out. And some of the things that we hit on for each department, or I'm sorry, each service is going to be right here. So AWS, a lot of people that are in marketing, big data, data scraping, advertising, someone that's looking for a target demographic is someone that we would suggest AWS with. They do have a little bit more history in the cloud server business. So they've got the databases that are a little bit more established. Not to say that Microsoft is lacking at all, but in these specific instances, we may suggest going with AWS instead. And then usually the teams that do go with AWS will have a team behind them. That means their DevOps will be able to, again, scale up, scale down, kind of go up and down, hopefully up for everyone. We want you to thrive and be successful. And again, usually this is something we suggest to have a full IT team for. And then if you go over to Azure, again, it is a very simple setup and transition. If you are already using Windows OS, you're already familiar with maybe an SQL server, this is a pretty simple transition. And a lot of people will mention that the user interface is a little bit cleaner. I'm sure you saw in the video just a moment ago. It is a lot nicer just clicking a few buttons, checking a few boxes, and typing your user and password than it is, spending 30 or 40 minutes just doing the setup. Again, that is a little bit daunting to some people, but that's why you do have the IT team in place. And if you don't, maybe Azure will be better for you. So right past this, a couple more real world examples. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I mentioned cost earlier, and I want to show you some real examples here. So let's say you have two virtual machines. They only have around 8 gigs of memory, which is a pretty small operation. So you'll see that Azure is going to be just over 11 cents per hour. And then AWS is just under 8 cents per hour. So this cost difference, obviously by the hour, is going to add up at the end of the month. A lot of times we assume between 220 and 300 hours working per month. So that will make a difference, but keep in mind any of those savings could possibly be put right back. If you are trying to save money with AWS, you may be putting that right back in to pay for an AWS architect, as they are usually on the higher end of the pay scale. Azure architects bring in around 110,000 per year, so you'll have to manage that payroll cost, and then an AWS architect will cost usually a little bit more, around 130 or 40, and it does attribute itself to the fact that you will have to have some more know-how, knowledge, time behind the screen, figuring out all of these menus, but I just wanted to show you that there so you do have an idea. And then an example that we have from a client that we had, we used some numbers very similar to what they were looking at. So plan A here, this is assuming around 30 users on a couple different server instances. The server usage doesn't technically matter because your servers are going to be up all the time. But assuming that your work weeks and stuff average out to around, like I said, 220 to 300 hours, you're going to be looking at around 2161 per month for plan A. And these plan differences are only usually for your network stability and bandwidth costs. So for plan A, they're paying for around 600 to 650 megabytes per second download and upload to make sure that their connection is stable and they can get all of their big data projects sent over. This is usually something we would have for bigger projects. You're sending a lot of files, sending a lot of data, you have to download a lot, and make sure your connection can handle it. So that would cost more every month, whereas plan B is usually around 100 to 150 megabytes per second, which in itself does not mean it's less stable, but having the bigger number does mean that you are a bit more stable if you're sending large files, your documents going back and forth. So that would be the difference here for our client. So again, just something to go through with you so you have a better understanding of what's going on. I know I've done a lot of talking here. So I'm actually going to hand it right back to Daniel. Don't worry, we're almost done here. A couple more things. And I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you for talking or letting me talk and hearing me out. If you have anything, we'll have a Q&A section shortly. So just sit tight. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. So as we mentioned, really there are little differences between AWS and Azure that'll make a big difference for your business, but you really can't go wrong. Whether you choose AWS or Azure, they are the top cloud service providers for a very good reason. It's used by all the leading industries and government agencies that you can think of. And there, again, the minor differences might not affect your business now, but can have a big impact later on. Or, you might just prefer one over the other. And it's not to say that if you're using a Microsoft environment for the most part, means you have to stick with Azure. That's not always the case as well, but a lot of times we found that with our clients, the teams, the IT teams that have experience working with Microsoft environments, it's just a much easier integration to stick with Azure. And likewise, we've had clients who are pretty much a completely Microsoft environment, but they choose to go the AWS route because they have certain goals in mind for the long haul, for the big picture. So again, it really depends on what your business needs are, what your goals are. And again, having that in the back of our mind when we make these decisions will play a vital part for our business futures. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us. And here is our contact information. If you have any more detailed questions that might need longer answers, or you have something that's a little bit related but kind of off topic, such as cybersecurity questions or deployment questions, and things that have a bit more of a complex answer, because a lot of things in tech, of course, isn't just black and white, right? So for those, we do ask that you contact us through our website or give us a call at our phone number, and we'd be more than happy to connect you with someone who might be an expert in that area who can answer those questions for you. And it's also a good place to go and check out previous webinars that we have about VM deployment and other remote work, how businesses can benefit from remote work as well. So it's a good place to see additional resources. And without much further ado, we will have a short time of Q&A. So this is a good time to unmute yourselves, ask any questions you may have, or you can use the chat box to the interface within this application to ask your questions, and we'll be sure to get to it.
And to start it off, I know a lot of us may be shy or even busy in the office right now. So a couple of the questions we've heard before are regarding, so obviously we're presenting Azure and AWS here, but we do know that there are plenty of other cloud providers out there. So if you've heard of Google Cloud, Alibaba, there's so many other services that we are maybe not as familiar with, but we can work with you on if it's a better cost savings or that has a feature that would work better for your business. That is definitely something we can work with you on. So just wanted to address that. That was something we've heard. Another thing was customer service. I hit on earlier that AWS is more of an open source thing. You kind of do it yourself, basically. That's not to take away from their customer service. We do have representatives that have worked with AWS before, and we do have maybe not a direct line to them, but we do have ways to get a hold of them, and you will always have your questions answered. If there's security issues, redundancy issues, if there's an emergency, or if you just need to talk about your options and your contract, there's always ways to do that with AWS. So I wanted to emphasize that AWS is kind of more of a DIY. You have your IT staff, but that's not to detract from their customer service at all. So those are a couple of the more popular questions we get. But if you have anything else, feel free to send it to us in the chat box or send us an email. You can go ahead and give us a call as well, whatever you need to do, and we'll try and help you out. We appreciate you coming and hanging out with us for just a bit. And again, if you need anything, you can contact us at the info that we had on screen. Thank you all.
Just another commonly asked questions. Which one of the two platforms, AWS or Azure, is more secure? That is a little bit more complex again than just a yes or no, answer. But typically, a lot of security experts would say that AWS might be a little more secure due to layer two configurations and ways to optimize. But again, even Azure is secure in every sense of the word, and it actually has better interface for user management. And that in itself can have its own benefits as well as far as security. But again, it depends on your business what you're looking for in the security aspect, and that can be a deep dive, right? So for things like that, we do ask that you contact us via our website or a phone call, and we will connect you with cybersecurity experts who can help guide you through which one might be a better option for you and give you the reasons why as well, not just, this one's better or that. Again, there are so many factors that can be involved with that. So we'd love to help you out, but it would take a little bit of a longer conversation to kind of delve into that. So we do ask that you contact us.
All right, and that's all we've got for you today. Thank you again for joining. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to working with any number of you in the future. And thank you again. You guys have a great day.